Hello guys, and welcome back to our channel. Now, as the Latino community grapples with its complex history and identity, I feel it's time to confront some hard truths. I know we have been talking about this topic, but in this video, we'll explore the uncomfortable realities of internalized colorism, the erasure of Black culture, and the debt that Latinos owe to Black leaders and communities. Now, as we've seen in recent videos, Latinos are finally speaking out about their own experiences with colorism and articism. And in this video, one Latino man bravely shared how his family perpetrated colorism, favoring those with lighter skin and colored eyes. Now, another woman pointed out the glaring truth that without Black culture and leadership, Latinos would not enjoy the same rights and freedoms they have today. Now, these conversations are not easy, but they're necessary. So it's time for Latinos to acknowledge the ways in which they've benefited from Black struggles and sacrifices. It's time to recognize the erasure of Black culture and the ways in which Latinos have internalized articism. So with that said, let's take a look at these videos. I'll be right back.
Latinos don't even like themselves. That is the real problem here. Centuries of colonization have ingrained deep self-hatred, passed down through generations as internalized. We've been conditioned to believe that assimilation equals survival, that belonging to white society means erasing our culture, our language, and our history. And today, far too many Latinos are still pathetically desperate for white acceptance. They will do anything to prove themselves worthy of white proximity. They will sell themselves out. They will sell out their families. They will sell out their children. And they will sell out their entire community. They will stab themselves in the back. They will stab the Black community and every other marginalized group they should be standing beside in the back, just to beg for crumbs from a table that they will never be invited to sit at. And these very Latinos, they're the reason we as people will never make real progress, because every time we move forward, they sabotage it, destroying any progress that we fight for, even at the expense of their own families and their own communities. And now we're watching the consequences of their betrayal play out in real time. ICE raids, tearing apart their own neighborhoods, and the very democracy of this country hanging by a thread. They most definitely helped do this. They helped the very machine that's now coming to destroy them. And I am beyond pissed.
When I was younger, I had a lot of internalized colorism in the sense that, coming from a Latino background, specifically like Mexican American, in my family, there were definitely some elements of colorism, right? And where I was able to see how those that were lighter skinned, those that had colored eyes were being treated better, especially by the Mexican and Latino media that I was consuming, like the novelas that always had the protagonist lighter skin with colored eyes. It almost felt like the moment that they're born light skinned with colored eyes, they were giving a Televisa contract or something. Or how when I was younger and had long hair, people would tell me, pareces indio, te pareces a Tarzan. And this is all also supported by evidence. We know that there was a study done in Mexico that showed that even those with lighter skin tone have higher access to money, have higher access to quality education compared to those that have a darker skin shade. But anybody out there that thought that being brown or having brown eyes is a bad thing, ignore all that. I hope that you are looking at yourself today and know that brown is beautiful. I remember being younger and wanting to wear colored eye contact just so I can have like blue ones, right? And it's ridiculous, right? I'm glad that I've never done that to give the appearance that I had colored eyes or like blue-green eyes. And as I look at my brown eyes right now, I'm very happy that this is who I am. I'm very happy to have unlearned that internalized colorism and continue unlearning it, especially too, because when you go online, you continue seeing how it's perpetuated, right? Like the other day, I was watching a video in where they were calling brown eyes. And when you think about it, a lot of us have been indoctrinated like that, especially as how certain parts of Latin America have strides towards blancamiento, or this idea of wanting to mejorar la raza. But be proud of your brown skin, be part of your brown eyes, be part of the indigenous ancestry that continues to live inside you, that is reflected through how you present in this world. Because we know it's been many years of that continued erasure, but it's up to us to ensure that we love ourselves and who we come from, and always remember that. And if you ever experienced colorism in your family, how was that? Go ahead and let me know in the comments.
Okay, I'm just going to say something that needs to be said among Latinos, among the Latino community, especially among Chicano community, Mexican Americans, Latino Americans, okay? If it wasn't for Black culture, Black people, Black communities, Black leaders, Black artists, Black music, all of it, If it wasn't for that, we would have an entirely different experience in the United States. Here's the difference between Black folks and Latino folks. Black people in America, their ancestors fought for the rights that we all get right now. So many Latinos act like white folks just decided to give Latinos rights, just decided to let Latinos vote, just decided to put laws in place so that you could buy property. If it wasn't for Black leaders, Latinos wouldn't even be able to bring their kids to a public school. We have a lot of the privileges that we have today because of the Civil Rights Act, because of the Fair Housing Act, because of Voting Rights Act, which for those of you Latinos who voted for Trump, you're welcome. If you are Latino, you better recognize the gift that we were just handed from Black people. So it actually makes sense that more Latinos voted for this president because you didn't have to work for the rights that you were just handed. And don't worry, I will be talking about immigration too, but for right now, I just want to give Black people their flowers. I want to give Black artists their flowers. I want to give Black culture their flowers, because if it wasn't for them, I would not be who I am.
Why are so many Latinos against Black people? Good question. So first of all, let me start by acknowledging that's the truth. And anyone that says otherwise is not helpful in this whole conversation. Like white people saying, I don't see color. Secondly, race is just a construct that was invented by European people intended to divide us, which they successfully managed to do. And unfortunately, just like many other purposefully marginalized communities, we play along exactly into the narrative of letting them divide us. We all have that tío or abuelito or papa in our family that is, has issues with Black people or Asian people, or is homophobic or transphobic. And most likely it's more family members than not. The issue is that it's really difficult to have these conversations. But we need to call in and educate our own family members, our own friends. And too often I see Latinos stay silent and they say, oh, that's just how he is. And yes, I use he a lot because it's a lot of times the man, at least in my experience. And if you live in LA, you probably know the scandal we recently had with the leaked audio. For me, the only scandal really was that so many Latinos that I know pretended that that's a surprise. Really? That's exactly like white people pretending that they're surprised at this. There are so many issues in our Latino community, from being anti-Black to brown people calling themselves white. I mean, please identify as whatever you want, but it's weird. To light-skinned Latinos like myself, pretending that they have the same to deal with as a Black person. And then there is the whole other layer of not being Latino enough, not being Black enough, not being brown enough. It's like our community is so busy tearing each other down that we lost sight of who is actually doing the oppression here. I had a US-born friend here in LA whose both parents were Mexican, but she has never been to Mexico and she doesn't speak Spanish. And she told me that in her opinion, I wasn't really Mexican, which I thought was funny. And I immigrated as an adult. I'm not even first generation. I'm a Mexican immigrant in the United States. But to her, just because my mom was European, that was enough to tell me I wasn't actually Latina. And those are the same kind of people that pretend that all Latinos are brown and act like Afro-Latinos don't exist. It's time for all of us to unite, because together, we're not the minority. We are the majority if we just have each other's back.
I saw a video of a Hispanic man today saying that we don't need the support from Black people because we got each other. We got Mexicans, Hondurans, Salvadorans, Nicaraguenses. He basically mentioned all Central America and said, we don't need you guys. If you guys can't support each other, how is it that we need your support? Or how is it that we're going to even get your support? Anybody who saw that video, I watched the whole thing. Anybody who saw that video that's Black, I'm sorry. I'm wholeheartedly sorry. we don't all think like that. My heart has been filled with so much joy seeing the support from the Black community, because we're finally coming to realize that we are so much alike, that we need each other, that we need to support each other. That rhetoric that we should hate each other, now more than ever, we should see how alike we are and how we need each other and how we can succeed when we unite. So I'm sorry, and just know that we don't all think that.
You know, the confessions shared in these videos reflect a raw honesty that many of us, especially in Latino communities, may not often discuss openly. And it's important to address the layers of colorism that have historically existed within our own families, especially when we consider how media, cultural norms, and even familial preferences have been shaped by colonial attitudes. Now, the idea that light skin and European features were considered better has permeated through generations and still impacts how many people of color view themselves today. The Latino man's admission of experiencing and internalizing this bias is a very powerful moment because it highlights a very real struggle many Latinos face in reconciling their identity within the context of their own culture. The idealization of European beauty standards often manifests in subtle and not so subtle ways, from how individuals are treated in their communities to how they perceive their own worth. For a lot of people, breaking free from that conditioning is a lifelong process, and recognizing that colorism exists within our communities is the first step to healing and creating space for all shades to be equally celebrated. Now, the second statement about the role of Black culture and Black communities in shaping the Latino experience is equally important because it's not just a statement of admiration, but a call for acknowledgement. Without the struggle and sacrifice of Black leaders and communities, the rights many Latinos enjoy today, such as voting rights and access to education, wouldn't be given. It's easy for some to assume that progress simply came with time or was a result of political movements tailored exclusively to the Latino community. However, in truth, Black Americans fought fiercely for civil rights, and their victories laid the foundation for many of the freedoms that people of color, including Latinos, now have. The point that many Latinos unknowingly act as if their rights were granted by Pamcala Americans rather than earned through Black struggle is very important because it serves as a reminder that history is often intertwined and that the struggles are not as separate as people might like to believe. When Black leaders fought for equality, they weren't just fighting for Black Americans. They were fighting for a more just America for all marginalized groups, including Latinos. You know, colorism is when a person is discriminated against within her own community or racial group because of the color of their skin. People with darker skin tones are usually looked down on, while fair-skinned people are often idolized. Now, before going any further, I just want to share an article which was written from the perspective of a 21-year-old palm-color-skinned Mexican-American woman. And this is her opinion on these issues. My maternal grandmother took me to the market in the city of Zamora in the state of Michoacan. It was the first time that I remember seeing an indigenous woman. She was sitting selling cactus in small bags and was dressed in her typical costume with a cute shawl. I was not more than 5 or 6 years old. I remember the peculiar noise of her indigenous language, which is the language of the Purepecias. When I was older, I began to hear family members comment on people's appearance. Usually the comments used to be about skin tone and features. He came out looking Indian. Good thing that he came out palm color like his mother. He has Indian shag hair. Well, we have French and Spanish ancestry, and with that we are relieved. Do not be shy. Do not be India. It is about improving the race. She's ugly and dark. Sounds familiar? Now, this feeling of European superiority, in her opinion, is actually fear, rejection, and shame towards the indigenous roots, the mother root. But what happens on September 15 and 16, Mexican Independence Day, or when they want to get drunk and sing with the mariachi band? Suddenly, they start with the corridor of Gabino Barrera, an indigenous man. They sing Prietita Linda, they dress in typical costumes, they eat and drink pre-Hispanic culinary treasures, intangible heritage of humanity. They celebrate the independence of Mexico and the Mexican Revolution, both battles fought by the indigenous and Afro-Indigenous people that to this day continue to be discriminated against and without just reward. Mexicans have a lot of internalized racism, specifically colorism. They have a lot of anti-blackness in their community. If you go to Mexico, you'll find palm color people with blue eyes who are Mexican, and you also find brothers and sisters with darker skin, but they are too prejudiced with themselves. Now, another lady shared how growing up in a Peruvian and Colombian household, she was used to being around family members who had indigenous features like herself, with tan skin, thick black hair, and dark features. She never felt a need to look differently and has always been comfortable in her own skin. It wasn't until she was exposed to other Latinos in everyday life that she learned that some had complexes about their skin color. She says she remembers having a friend who was a fair-skinned or palm color presenting Latina who would make remarks about her tan complexion from time to time. Normally, she would shrug off her comments because they didn't have any effect on her. However, she remembers one summer when they had a party, taking photos, and upon looking at them, she half-jokingly and insulted, saying, "Look at you in this pic, looking like an Aztec Indian." Unfortunately, this is what is known as colorism, and it's a problem that continues to exist within Latino communities. Colorism is the preferential treatment of those who are lighter skinned than those who are darker within a group of people. You know, race is a social construct invented by Europeans intended to divide people and holds no scientific merit. And through the illusion of race, Europeans were able to manipulate blacks and other natives into believing that palm-coloredness is superior in order to justify their conquest. The phrase colorism may have developed because it is incorrect to say that people of color are artists because they are part of an oppressed group. If articism did not exist in the Latino community, they would not be so color conscious, and colorism would not exist. I feel it's time for Latinos to work on this. I don't know what you guys think, but share your thoughts as well in the comments. Thank you for always watching, and see you in our next video as we bring you another video.